It's good day to brew, baby. What is up, YouTube? It's your boy Millsy. Back from Hometown Commander, back for another episode of Millsy Brews, the show where I take my first pass at the Commander in front of us on a budget on my quest to brew the magic world. You know the motto, baby. It's ABB, always be brewing, and that's what we're back to do today. That deck list is going to be down in the description for you below. As always, I'd really appreciate if you could interact with the video, like, comment, subscribe, consider checking out those links in the description. I'd appreciate it. But today we're gonna be continuing to celebrate the Secret Scare, Secret Lair drop, and we're covering a commander that I haven't covered before. I think it's finally time to cover an OG Blink legend in Roon of the Hidden Realm. A 5-mana Bant Rhino Soldier, Vigilance Trample. You can pay 2 and tap him to exile another target creature and return it back to the battlefield during its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. Now, Roon is kind of interesting for a couple reasons. One, it and I think Brago are kind of looked at as some of these nice OG, Blink commanders, and they're both very good at what they do. But I think Roon's really interesting because other Blink commanders generally will only blink your creatures. Roon does technically blink your opponent's creatures as well, and that is important. I think it's not going to happen a ton, but it is important to note that you could blink a huge Hydra and have it come in and lose all of its counters and, and die to state base. There's ways to, stop a combo or stop a winning line by removing a creature as you go into a phase or something like that. There's so many ways that Roon can interact with our opponents and, do all the things that we want it to do. And so that's basically going to be the goal of our deck. What we're going to try to do is blink our own creatures, create loops where creatures can blink each other to generate a bunch of value and try to just create a ton of fun. Got an asterisk on the deck value on this one because of the cost of this Secret Lair. Of course, if you buy the Secret Lair, just add that to the cost on here, and you're good to go. But I want to say a quick thank you to the channel members. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. If you're interested in seeing all of our videos just a little bit earlier, for just $1 a month, consider checking that out down below. All right, well, I think I want to lead off by kind of defining some terms. So, to me, I think you hear blink and you hear flicker used a lot. To my knowledge, most people use them to mean to the same thing, but to me, blink is normally something that's done where a permanent's returned immediately, where flicker to me is something where it happens at the next end step. I know that's kind of confusing, but it is important to note that two different types of these abilities exist. You have ones that will return them back immediately, and then you have ones that will return them back later. So I think it's important to note that as we talk about them, that you notice the difference in the usefulness of both, right, depending on what it is. So the Eternal Wanderer and Venser both have the ability to exile a permanent until the next end step. Now, the big thing to note is that the Wanderer can hit anyone's artifact or creature, does not have to hit yours, whereas Vensers can hit any permanent you own. So it can be a land, it can be an artifact, it can be an enchantment, it can be a creature. You can see there's a lot of options for Venser. Brago, again, one of the very popular Blink commanders. Whenever it hits a player in combat, you can exile any number of permanents, non-land permanents we want, and bring them back in under our control. A really great ability and can set up some really funky loops. Deadeye Navigator can soul bond with another creature, and as long as it's paired with a creature, they each have 1 in a blue. Exile this creature and return it to the battlefield under your control. The way soul bond works is if a creature is entered and either it or it and Deadeye Navigator are not already paired, they can pair and become a soul bond pair. Note that if a creature were to leave the battlefield, that pair then wears off. Navigator is a combo we're going to talk about later, and it can be really useful for our deck. You see Flicker Wisp and Restoration Angel here, both great blinkers. Restoration Angel brings it back in right away. No creature you control, whereas Flicker Wisp can get any permanent from the game and return it to play under its owner's control at the end of the turn. So important to note that what you can hit here varies depending on what thing you're using to do it. Soul Hoarder is going to grow every time a creature is exiled from the battlefield. In the beginning of our end step, we can blink another creature, which is pretty cool. Thassa, same thing, letting you blink a creature you control and bring it back in right away. And then Yorion, aka the Sky Noodle, can come in and exile any number of other non-land permanents we control and own and put them back on the battlefield being the next end step. So Yorion does delay it a little bit, but allows us to take multiple things at once, which can be very useful depending on what loops we're trying to set up. And even in the spells that we play, you're going to vary here. You're going to have single target things like Cloud Shift. You're going to have mass bounce like Another Round and Eerie Interlude. Another Round's very interesting just like Eerie Interlude, because you can just do any number of creatures you want. You don't have to target, which is great because then your opponent can't remove the thing you're trying to blink in response, or stop the spell from fizzling. Another round's kind of interesting because you can pay to do it as many times as you want as long as you have the mana. Which we have loops in the deck that can create a large amount of mana, which is a option. But you things like Ephemerate, Ghostly Flicker, Momentary Blink, these are single target, or two in the case of Ghostly Flicker. Instant speed ways to blink our creatures. But then we have more reined in versions in Conjurer's Closet and Teleportation Circle going off on each of our end steps. Hearth and Home goes off whenever the equipped creature hits a player in combat. You get to blink a creature you control and go get a basic land. Remember, Hearth and Home does add protection from green and white, so it should be able to hopefully help you hit the right person in combat so that you can get it to go off and blink the thing you want to blink. Okay, so we talked about a bunch of ways to blink, right? Now we want to talk about what do we blink? What do we flicker? And so the whole goal here is creatures that have really great enters the battlefield abilities. You have old school legends like Acidic Slime coming in and destroying target artifact, enchantment, or land. You have things like Aether Channeler, which can make a bird or return a non-land permanent to its owner's hand or draw you a card. Aid of Treachery can gain control of target permanent and will draw you a couple cards at your end step if you control 3 or more permanents you don't own. Avenger of Zendikar comes in and makes all those plans, and you can grow them every time you have a land come in. Coiling Oracle lets you reveal the top card of your library. If it's a land, you put it on the battlefield. Otherwise, you put it into your hand. A really great ability, and one you can definitely see early to get some real value. Glenelendra Archmage is in the Secret Lair. And I think that the Untrained Eye may look odd. Here's a 4-mana creature that can pay blue and sacrifice itself to counter a non-creature spell, but it has Persist. Persist is an ability that says whenever it dies, if it doesn't have a -1/-1 counter on it, it comes back with 1 on it. And that may seem weird in a deck like this, but you have to remember that when you blink, flicker, or what do you want to call it, whenever a creature is exiled and comes back in, anything that was attached to it, any counters on it have leave, meaning then the Archmage is going to come back in with no counters on it, and then you can sacrifice it again, and get its persist ability. So Archmage is great because it kind of becomes a nice counter play for you to leave up to, affect your opponents. Lizard, whenever it enters, up to one other target creature loses all abilities and becomes a green lizard with power and toughness 4/4. In my head, I just keep thinking of the lizard meme every time I read this card. But Lizard's really nice because I find that we don't run loses all abilities removal enough because it's just something that can really shut down creatures and have your opponents have a really hard time dealing with it. And then Lizard's not a bad body that you can then use to attack if need be, but I just like the ability of shutting down your opponent's creatures. Rex Sage, another classic creature, coming in and destroying target artifact or enchantment. And then one of our key players we'll talk about later for a combo in Peregrine Drake. Whenever it comes in, you can untap up to 5 lands. We'll talk about that in a second. I think you can already see why that's pretty good to begin with, but we'll talk a little bit more about Peregrine Drake in the future. Reflector Mage, whenever it comes in, you return a creature back to an opponent's hand, but they can't cast that until your next turn. I really like this ability because it can stop that opponent from immediately putting that thing back down and hopefully forcing their strategy to take a break for a turn or two. Stonehorn Dignitary says whenever it enters, target opponent skips their next combat phase. This is a really interesting ability because the way this deck is designed to win most of the time is you're going to create loops where you're blinking creatures an arbitrarily large amount of time. Well, if you think about it, Stoneheart Dignitary is one of those creatures that if we can, if we can blink it 3 times, I mean, you could technically stop all your opponents from ever attacking. In some sense, it would be hard to do, and you'd have to set up the pieces. But it's important to note that an effect like that could be really important. Thragtusk, whenever it comes in, you gain 3 life. Whenever it leaves the battlefield, you get a beast. Again, so great, you can get both of those on blinking it. Okay, so we talked about how to blink our creatures. We talked about what we're going to blink, but we can also profit from things coming in. There's a lot of effects that profit from creatures entering the battlefield. Things like Elish Norn and Panharmonicon can just double the amount of times those enter the battlefields go off, making them even better. Elish Norn also has that nice upside to shut down our opponent's enters triggers as well. And then we have a wacky card in Preston the Vanisher. A 4-mana rabbit says whenever another non-token creature comes into our control, if it wasn't cast, we just create a copy of it, except it's a 0/1 white illusion. There are no creatures that I can think of in this deck that I wouldn't want to make a copy of when they come in the battlefield, considering their ETBs are so good. And Preston, which we're not going to talk about, has a ton of combo lines with any of those creatures we talked about that blink something immediately to just go off in go into loops where we can blink a lot of things and make a lot of value. You can also sack illusions to get rid of something if need be. Aura shards, whenever a creature comes into play under our control, we can destroy target artifact or enchantment. Again, great when you're going to be blinking things in and out. Extraordinary Journey can exile some creatures on entering, and for each of those cards, we could play it. It's anyone's owner can play them when they're exiled. But the important part of the journey that's great for us is whenever one or more non-token creatures enter, if any of them enter from exile or were cast from exile, we get to draw a card. This is important because then every turn when we're blinking creatures, we're drawing cards, which is cool. Guardian Project Course, another card in the Secret Lair drop. Whenever a non-token creature comes in, if it doesn't have the same name as another creature we control, we draw cards. We can help us churn through our deck, finding the key pieces we need. Okay. We're going to talk about two core combo loops. And these are just really basic ways to show you how you can get these loops set up and what you can do to build onto these. So the first is Deadeye Navigated or Emil. Both of these basically will allow you to blink a creature, and the creature ideally we're looking for is something like Peregrine Drake. When it comes in, you untap up to 5 lands. So Emil for 3 mana lets you blink another creature, and Deadeye Navigator, as long as it's paired with Peregrine Drake, will let you pay 2 mana to blink it. So as you can see, with Navigator, you should ideally be netting 3 mana, and with Emil, you'll be netting 2 mana extra every time you blink Peregrine Drake, effectively, right, getting you infinite mana. What you choose to do with that mana is up to you, but again, I think you could start to see where that can get really out of hand quickly if you find something to fund it into. The other thing are loops that let you effectively blink creatures as many times as you want. So you see Feldar Guardian here says whenever it enters, you may exile another target permanent you control and then bring it back in right away. Restoration Right, when it comes, you can exile a target non-angel creature you control and bring it in back away. So, as you can see, these two could infinitely blink each other. Now, the important thing to know is it's not technically infinite because just like the Peregrine, the loop is not infinite because we do have to step through it. You have to choose targets, right? You have to do things. It's not like they're just immediately go infinite. But with something like Peregrine Loop, you could just prove that you can show that you have infinite mana, and then you're probably done. Here, truthfully, I don't think this loop benefits without something else. Ideally, probably a creature that can blink multiple at the same time. And there's a lot of ways you can really get into gamifying this loop. And if you want to become a real master with this deck, this is the loop that you need to figure out how to profit the most from. And how to add more pieces into this to make it a real, scary engine. This is your goal if you want to kind of start playing with power, and I think you can find some great things to add into this to make it really fun. But I've said it before on the show, and I'll say it again, no deck's ever complete. This is my first shot at Roon, and I think going into testing, the answer is really, do you have enough ways to blink? Something like Abuelos, a nice option for that, giving you a way to blink another creature. Do we have enough things that we want to blink? I love the idea of something like Rough Triplets. It says if it enters the battlefield, if it isn't a token, you make 2 tokens that are copies of it. This is kind of fun because then you can keep blinking it, making more copies of Gruff Triplets, getting more creatures. And then, of course, you could look into things like Cathar's Crusade, buffing your entire board every time creatures come in and finding a nice on-ramp for your opponents, losing the game, but just by buffing all your creatures. There's so many ways, I think, to finish the game, and I think I lost sight of that just a little bit. But I think going into testing, we really need to test, do we have a way to end the game? And if we don't, maybe it's something like Cathar's Crusade or Gold Knight Commander that can buff all of our creatures whenever another creature comes in that we can use to help, finish that game plan. But let's do what we love to do on the channel the most and get into our playtest. Remember, the goal of playtest on our channel is not to find magical Christmas land. It's not just to show off all our best plays, but it's to get in some gameplay scenarios and kind of understand what hands we're looking to keep and how we're going to look to set these things on up. So here we're looking at a 4-lander. We have Illusionist Bracers and Virtue of Knowledge, an offer you can't refuse. I mean, ideally we want the 5th mana for Roon, but I don't mind this. We've got lots of mana. We've got some ways to get started. Virtue on its adventure side can copy a triggered or activated ability. And then on its normal side, basically just acts as another Panharmonicon for us, right? Doubling up triggered abilities of permanents coming in. And then the Bracers says whenever we activate the ability of the equipped creature, and it isn't a mana ability, you copy it. So if we can equip this to Roon, every time we use Roon's ability, it's going to go off twice. I think Coiling Oracle is a great place to start. Even though we don't see a land in these top 2 cards, this is a nice way to keep us looking. Well, there's the Reliquary Tower, which is going to help us a ton. Reliquary is also great later in the game, right? Because then if we start drawing a mega amount of cards, we don't have to worry too much about it. I think we just get Roon in here. That Shards goes off, potentially taking something out. Here we go. Turn 5, 6 mana. I love the idea of the bracers onto Roon. We also could just if I put the bracers into Roon, though, I don't have enough mana to activate Roon this turn. So I mean, you could do that and then hold up the unoffer. Or we could go with something like Virtue and then load up being able to use a room this turn, right? Getting onto there and then tapping Roon to go off twice. And I would probably just blink the Coiling Oracle twice. I just realized that you're going to have to choose. I don't think I can. I don't think I can choose Oracle twice because it's not going to be there right when it goes off. So I don't think that makes the most, because obviously if I choose the same Oracle twice, we blink it, it's no longer the same target. So maybe it makes sense to go with something like the Cloud Blazer. We're going to gain 4 life, draw 2 cards, you get the Aura Shards going off twice, and then use Roon to like blink the Oracle, right? To hand, land goes in, so you could start to see, right, the benefit there. That goes off twice. The shards would destroy a couple things. We're going to end up losing a card here, but I think that's okay. Now, actually, the braces would be good because you could blink both of them, right? So, I mean, you can kind of pick and choose what you want to do there. Now, coming back to our turn, what makes the most sense? I mean, we have a ton of ways to draw cards with that Collaborator. So this, I mean, you could play the Angel. On playing the Angel, you're going to be able to blink both of these, right? Drawing us some more cards, and then we could go from there. So Coiling Oracle goes off twice. And then Cloud Blazer drawing us 2 twice. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I mean, you could Preston pay 2 to blink Restoration Angel, and then we would have a bunch of ETBs. We basically, so my thought here is Preston comes in, you activate Roon to blink to make Restoration Angel come out and come back in. You can have it target really anything you want, but you're going to make a copy of it, and the illusion will just target the original one, and this is going to keep the copies would basically just have it keep coming back in again and again, and you, I guess, just be able to destroy all your opponent's artifacts and enchantments, and then you could still do this and just have a bunch of illusions, right? We could basically just have an infinite number of O1 illusions. We have no way to buff them at the moment, but I mean, that is an outlet. I'm trying to think of what else you could do. I guess you could also, you could go for the Blazer to draw, I guess, if you want to. Oh, they all go off twice. Yeah, they all go off twice because of the knowledge. So actually, you could do a lot here. You could, go to the Blazer to keep drawing cards, or just continuing to get the Restoration Angels. I actually just realized that we will have to probably stop this loop at some point by blinking Roon or like Coiling Oracle, because each of this is going to go off twice. Oh, I can't target an angel. Okay, that's where this loop stops, is you have to pick a non-angel, huh? Okay, so it would just come in picking the Oracle, and it would just go a couple cards deep. So basically, we would just need another creature to be able to target the angel. I think you also could just go Peregrine Drake just to fund yourself with enough mana to be able to play more things, right? Okay, so that's a good thing to see yourself get into, is what do these loops look like? I think this is probably the hardest thing about Blink decks to understand, is that you're going to get yourself into these loops that you need to understand what needs to go where. And this is why it's best to do this in a playtest where you can figure this out. Now, next turn, I mean, you have something like Soul Herder that can grow itself. You have Peregrine Drake, which I do believe is technically just going to net us a ton of mana. The question is, what do we use it for? Because I could get like Treachery and the Drake down. Because the Drake's going to untap 10 lands when it comes in, meaning that you're going to tap 5 for it, 5 for, before they untap. So you basically just going to have 15 mana. And then we just need to find a way to, how do we blink the angel that isn't an angel so that we can, basically go from there. Maybe it's something where we can continue to draw with, Coiling Oracle, whatever, and get into it. But I think otherwise, you blink the Cloud Blazer, draw some more cards. I mean, we should be able to really get ourselves into a nice scenario where we can start making this blink loop happen. It's good that we see that because, again, that's where I think this deck is going to come down to. You got to start wrapping your mind around these lines, and you've got to understand how to do them. I'll admit I'm not there yet. I've still got a lot to learn, but it's important that if this is the kind of deck you want to play, make sure you understand. Here we got a 3-lander, but, Soaring Arcane Signet's perfect. Right there, you're just getting access to all the mana you need. So, right. Turn 2, Roon. Right, turn 3 means we could ideally blink something with him. I'm trying to think. One, two, three, four, 1, 2. So we could go Coiling Oracle, get a copy of it. So we do it twice. Hand down. And then, now on a future turn, Roon can always blink the Coiling Oracle. But the nice part is, right, you'd have Thassa, which could blink the Coiling Oracle. We could get the Truth and Justice on Roon to do it. Wandering, the Wanderer could do it as well. But I think I kind of just like Thassa. And I've still got, 3 mana left? So you could get the Truth on a future turn. Again, blink the Coiling Oracle. It gets a copy because of the Preston the Vanisher. So again, 1 from it, 1 from the copy, and then Thassa goes off on end step, blinking it. You get a copy of it right from the Preston, 1 from it, 1 from the copy. And I think you could start to see where Coiling Oracle can be so useful, especially in these ways that you have to loop it. Because now as we come into our next turn, we've got 8 mana. We have things like Direport Mage to start digging. Elishnoran's just going to start doubling up on our ETBs. We'd have 4 mana left. I mean, you could go Feldar Guardian, which would create a pretty big loop with itself. And then you could, your other target could be something like Coiling Oracle just to continue to dig through your library, right? Because I'm just trying to simulate this in my head. So Feldar Guardian comes in, it gets a copy of it. Both of the, so actually it gets 2, right? It gets 2 because of Elishnoran. All 3 of these are going to go off twice, blinking something else. Know that you can blink Roon and, Elishnoran if you want to, but they're not the ideal pieces here. The point is, you're probably blinking something like Coiling Oracle with some of them. The only problem is because it's going to go off in the way they get ordered. My thought is one of them is probably going to blink Feldar Guardian. One of them can blink Coiling Oracle, and it doesn't really matter where the other triggers go. It says you may, so it's not like you have to. My thought is one of them blinks the Feldar, so it comes in and happens again, and one of them blinks something like Coiling Oracle, where you're getting more and digging more through your library for another piece. And this is where I think knowing how you're going to end the game could be really important. I mean, you're going to load up a bunch of illusions for Preston, basically to be able to remove non-land permanents. But otherwise, I think you just work your way into a very large amount of Coiling Oracle and Feldar Guardian illusions. And then I think all we'd need is a real way to buff them, and we'd be in good shape, right? So I think I'm realizing now, just 2 playtests in, how important I think something like Cathar's Crusade could be. Because if you look at it there, you have no way to give them haste that turn, but you'd effectively have a way to win the game. And then in just an arbitrarily large board. And then if you're worried about somebody having the wipe, you could wait and then just reload back up with something like Thassa, right, letting you blink something. It's a shame we're not in red, for things like Impact Tremors or something like that. But again, I think doubling up your ETBs is just going to allow you to really dig through your library, which I'm now realizing that I think something like Cathar's Crusade or Gold Knight Commander or anything that can just straight buff your creatures. Coat of Arms would be fine in that sense with the illusions, but I kind of like Cathar's Crusade a little more because it then doesn't completely rely on Preston to be the thing that's helping you out. It just would, your blink at all wouldn't matter. Here we're looking at just a one lander, but we do have the Soul Ring. We're looking at a Felwar Stone and a Cultivate, so we have more than enough mana here, right, to get ourselves into some good value. If our opponent has specifically white, this is a turn 2 Roon. And then either lands. This is specifically a turn 2 Roon. Let's go on the predication that it's not. I would just crack the Cultivate. Get a Plains. I don't think it really matters what else we get to hand. And that leaves me with 1-2 mana left. I mean, if somebody has green, we could knock the Wall of Blossoms. Otherwise, no worries. It's okay. We still have enough mana to use. So 7 here. I'm thinking like Ruin the Blossoms to draw. Now this turn, right, 8 mana. I love the idea of getting something like Brago in to get it started. It probably would have been the better play last turn if we didn't have to cultivate. But now that's 4, sorry. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4 mana left. I really want to get in Galadriel. But you could just go ahead and double ramp here if you wanted to. Just getting some extra things in. And then, now as we come to our turn, you can go with Galadriel, and now you have the option to either... Galadriel's a way to buff at least buff your creatures once each turn, because its ability can go off once. Rex Age, destroy something, have everything get a counter, and then Roon could blink, Wall of Blossoms to draw us a card, right? And then that creature comes in, we could have Scry, Shoot, and Draw. We could add the green, and then you go to combat. Brago hits. You can have it. I guess if you made a loop, you could get a counter on a lot of things with Galadriel because it's only for its one instance. So actually, if Roon blinked Galadriel and then you went to combat and Brago blinked these two, you would get a counter on all. You'd get basically a counter on Roon and Brago, which could start, I guess, growing them technically. So yeah, we have a nice little loop starting there that would draw some more cards, get us some more value, and then we'd be basically just trying to get into a loop where we can continue to dig deeper, which Galadriel does do because she can allow you to scry 2 and then draw. Just note that it's only another creature. But again, if Galadriel gets blinked as the same time as 2 creatures, off of Brago, it's going to see both of them coming in, allowing you to scry and then draw. So we should be able to ideally still dig here with Galadriel and then, start getting Roon and Brago to be pretty big. Again, Roon has trample, so that's pretty nice. And then I think we're in good shape. It's just going to be digging through until we find another piece to just, keep that party going. Whether it's a Coiling Oracle to keep digging, whether it's a Preston the Vanisher to keep digging, I think you can kind of see some of the pieces there on that one. But let's go one more. Playtest number 4 here. Keep it a 4-lander. Notably no blue, but we do have Patriarch Seal for the blue. We see Truth of Justice and then Farewell for some removal. I said no blue, and then we immediately draw the Glacial Fortress. So there we go. There's the last thing we needed. Get the Patriarch Seal. Note the Patriarch Seal can blink a creature or untap a creature. So that would allow us to untap Roon if we wanted to do that. 6 mana here, but just a little bit off the treachery. I think we could just go with something like a 6 slime, get something down. Missing the land drop here, which kind of stinks, but that's okay. I think it's Truth and Justice, right? Have an attack, hope that we still hit. If we do, we blink the acidic slime and go get, a land. Take out something else, and then we just don't have enough mana to use Roon as well. But okay, there's Peregrine Drakes. We're in good shape. This could be a good start, right? 5 mana for it. It untaps all the lands. We could actually go 4 or 5 and tap these two right before they untap. So that'd be 6, 8 mana. Treachery feels really good. Take something. Attack with Roon. Blink the Treachery. Take something, go get a basic land. And now we're looking to be in not bad shape. We just need a way to blink the Peregrine Drake, which we do in Momentary Blink. We also have something like AOZ that we can then put down this turn. Remember that you get that free blink with the Hearthstone, and then we can actually still tap to blink with Roon. It comes back at the end instead. And we can actually do it twice because of the seal. I don't mind this. A little bit of a slower start. It's going to require a little bit more mana, but I think you can start to see, our things coming together. But I'd love to know, what do you think of Roon down in the comment section below? I think there's still a lot to learn on a brew like this. Obviously, this type of deck style isn't something I really play a ton, but I think you're kind of starting to see where the basis of this is, and you can really go make it your own, choose the creatures you want to blink, and find your little niche, right, in what you want to do with it. But I'd love to know what you think of Roon down in the comment section below, and I will catch you all next.